know this, almost by definition, you can't know this. You don't hear the dog that doesn't bark. So let's take a look at a couple that did. J. Edgar Hoover had a hard-on for Martin Luther King. Actually, J. Edgar had a hard-on for information about anybody, but he was particularly enthralled with Martin Luther King, developed a rather thick file on him. Supposedly, within that file, there was proof of extramarital affairs, stuff that could have created trouble between Martin and Coretta Scott had it come to light. Martin was threatened in a very particular manner with an unsigned note. King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. You have just 34 days in which to do it. There is but one way out. That one way was intended to be suicide. When King remained unmoved by this particular threat, another way was thrust upon him. Chief Justice William Rehnquist, hooked on painkillers. Richard Nixon knew this well in advance, courtesy of the FBI, before nominating him as Associate Justice to the Supreme Court. Actually, Ronald Reagan was briefed on this as well. Ronald Reagan knew of a psychotic episode that Rehnquist endured when, during an attempt to detox from his painkillers, he was found running around outside in the middle of the night wearing his pajamas, insisting that the CIA was out to get him. Of course, just because you think that the CIA is out to get you, that doesn't mean that you are paranoid or hallucinating in any way. It's the running around outside in your pajamas that tips you over into that realm. This was 1981. He was named Chief Justice in 1986. That's right, Ronald Reagan knew full well that he was nominating a junkie to the highest judicial post in the land well in advance of doing so. Here's the shit. We want damaged goods in power. We can control damaged goods. Martin Luther King, not quite damaged enough. Rehnquist was. Those 4 stripes that he added to his sleeve for the Clinton impeachment hearings, he got the idea from a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, from the character of the Lord Chancellor. That's right, he designed his own robes in latter years. In the middle of the year 2000 election mix-up, with the Florida recount underway, the Supreme Court kept dancing around whether or not to get involved and kept kicking the issue back to Florida, which kept pushing ahead with the recount, you know, counting every vote. Somewhere in there, a package got delivered. When the issue came back to the Supreme Court, it came back under the flimsiest proposition imaginable. It contended that George Bush would be irreparably harmed personally should the counting of the ballots continue forward. We want damaged goods in power, if only to have something to throw under the bus. Larry Craig, Anthony Weiner, we knew, there are a dozen and more just like them. When the moment arrives, under the bus. After what seemed like years of harassment, in the face of a mounting scandal, torture memos, voter suppression, U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales finally resigned his post. It was a Monday. On Tuesday, we threw Larry Craig under the bus. Larry had it coming anyway. His number was up. He had been caught and pled guilty, for God's sakes. He was in the system. News of this, of course, came straight to the desk of the Attorney General, and he passed it on to me. I made a call. One of my guys in the press, check out Minnesota criminal court case number, blah, blah, blah. AG took the dive, and within 24 hours, he was old news. Months and months, people petitioned to get rid of him. He was gone on a Monday, and by Sunday he was such old news that nobody on the Sunday morning chat shows bothered asking a single question about him. Why? Because the nation had just taken a 6-day tutorial in the bathroom mating dance of the closeted Republican functionary. People are out there living lives of quiet desperation. Quiet enforced desperation. Just imagine what kind of photos we must have of certain key administrators in order to get them to assume the positions that they now assume. Colin Powell. Imagine what it must have taken to get him up in front of the United Nations, evidence as flimsy as saran wrap, insisting again and again that the Winnebagos spotted by satellite were actually mobile chemical weapons labs, and that the aluminum cylinders from Niger were nuclear acceleration tubes. Man of integrity, all the way to the end. Joseph Lieberman. He's very Jewish, you know. And his peculiar disposition was not in keeping with Talmudic practices. It's an unfortunate thing. But when people obsess over a given thing, that obsession slowly begins to eat away at them. They despair over their own weakness, and rather than stringing themselves out for a lifetime of torment, they decide, well then, what if I just go ahead and do it? Then, at last, I would know that I am the wicked wretch that my mother always told me that I was. I would at least have lived down to that expectation, shake loose of this flimsy pretense of virtue, of moral standing, of integrity. At last, let it all come crashing to an end. But I digress. You don't need to control them all. Some of them actually believe the spin. This may be 10%. Another 25% are gloriously amoral. They will do anything, undo anything, destroy anything, and pretend to believe anything for the sake of forwarding the agenda, doing the job, and absorbing just that little bit much more power in the process. At this point, you only need another 16% to bump you up over 50 and get you to that voting majority. Where do they come from? Fear. And virtually all of them are afraid. They fear blame. They fear re-election. They fear our ability to out them to the world. That number alone, 98%. I'm not saying that we have damning evidence on all 98. Yet. But in light of all of the other fears and the true believers and the amoral power mongers, you just need, say, 20–25% in your stable at any particular moment in case of emergencies. Of course, we've got active dossiers on all of them. And oh, we did so want John Edwards to win. When the need arises, we just call in a couple of our markers. They get an envelope with a note, maybe a couple of pictures. Your friend in the one true faith does not believe in this vote. Our boys overseas need to know they have your support. My favorite character, your friend in the one true faith. These people have wives, golf partners, kids, neighbors, fellow churchgoers. Think thou they want their neighbors to know what evil lurks inside the hearts of men. The things they've said, the women they've done, the animals they've abused, the pictures they stare at hungrily at 3 o'clock in the morning. Given the choice, a few more bombing runs are not unwelcome. Oh, the other two. Who are the other 2% who do not have this natural fear? They are the ones who have been outed already. The ones whose long night of darkness has long been exposed to the world. The ones who have passed beyond our reach. The gay man who admits to his homosexuality. The alcoholic who has run his car off of a bridge in the middle of the night. A night that has long been illuminated to all. They are the two that we cannot control. We'll get them in the next life. And so, gentlemen, this concludes our prospectus. What we have here is clearly a profitable enterprise, and one that I am sure you will want to have available to your respective corporate agendas, agendas which will now break with furious speed onto our legislative calendar. Oh, yes, of course. You are all free to walk out if you're under your own power. But in point of fact, none of you walked in here without first having a thorough dossier developed. That deep, dark secret, that dark night of the soul, I was there, alongside you, feeling alongside you the seamy underbelly of your darkest fear, watching intently as your long pretense of virtue finally came to an end. I know the despair that lurks inside you all, and I feel that darkness. I empathize for you, and I'm here to see to it that you are justly compensated for those haunting nights and that terrible burden. I take your sin upon myself for as long as you choose to stand by my side. Just never forget, the bus is waiting, and I will throw you under it when the moment arrives. Or I can make you richer than your wildest dreams. Be on the lookout for a package from your friend in the one true faith. You'll know what to do.